It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's APB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're finally getting around to Iroh Grand Lotus. I originally had Iroh on the content schedule for last week, but truthfully, after playtesting it, I just didn't like it. So I wanted to come back and update it, and I think I've just made it just that little bit better and more what I want from it. Iroh is a 6-mana teamer commander with firebending 2s. Remember, whenever you attack, you're going to net 2 red, and you can use it to the end of combat. During our turn, each non-lesson instant sorcery in our graveyard has flashback. The flashback is equal to its mana cost. And each lesson card in our graveyard has flashback 1. So very interesting ability, right? Allowing us to cast our spells back out of our graveyard again. And really reducing the lessons. So of course, lessons are something we're going to care about. We'll talk about some of the examples of the lessons we want to take advantage of. Of course, other spells we want to be able to cast from our graveyard with flashback. Of course, we're going to have a lot of spells matter stuff, right? That's where I think the deck's really going to hang its hat on. And then a couple potential combos you can use to have a ton of spell slinging fun. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And if you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit earlier for just $1 a month, consider checking that out down below. Obviously, Avatar is the return of lessons, and that's what we're getting back into in this set. We see the first one here in Boomerang Basics, just a 1-mana return and now land permanent back to its owner's hand. If we control that permanent, we draw a card. So again, because it says non-land, it can hit a lot of things, which is I think what makes it very useful. Containment Breeze, getting rid of an artifact or enchantment, and can make you a pest if it's low enough on the mana curve. Illuminate History lets you pitch a number of cards and then draw that many. If there are 7 or more cards in our graveyard, we get to make a spirit. Again, great, because if you think about it, you could pitch your lessons, right? You know you'll be able to flashback them back, and you dig through your deck deeper. Shared Roots basically being rampant growth, but having the lesson type on it makes it great for our deck, allowing us to potentially use it twice. Teachings of the Archaic says if an opponent has more cards in hand than you, you draw 2 cards. Draw 3 instead if an opponent has at least 4 more cards in hand than you. So interesting. Abandoned Attachments just lets us pitch, and if we do draw 2, again, pitch a lesson or pitch something that you want to flashback later. Accumulate Wisdom lets us look at the top 3, put 1 into our hand and the rest on the bottom, and we get to put each of those cards in our hand instead if there's 3 or more lessons in the yard. Energy Bending, getting us had to have all of our lands be every basic land type of turn, draw us a card. How to Start a Riot gives a creature menace. And then all of our creatures potentially +2/+0 until end of turn. It'll Quench You acts as a nice counterspell. Octopus Form, just a nice way to protect your creature for just 1 mana. And then Overwhelming Victory deals 5 damage to target creature, and each creature we control gets trample and +X/+0 if it deals excess damage that way, which is pretty interesting. Sorry, all of our creatures get trample, but they get a buff if we deal excess damage. So what are the other spells we're looking to use? Well, I mean, obviously you want things like Jeska's Will, right? Being able to flash that back seems pretty great. Elemental Eruption's kind of interesting. Has Storm and makes you a bunch of dragons with prowess. Hazel Rage is the example of a spell with buyback, and you could pay an additional mana, and if you do, you get to put it back in your hand as it resolves. It allows us to buff all our creatures, and potentially, if you have enough mana, you can continue to recast it over and over again. Mana Geyser can net us a ton of mana, equal the number of tap lands our opponents control. We get access to a couple, of course, non-extra turn spells in blue. Things like Temporal Manipulation and Time Warp are the key ones, because they don't exile themselves when they resolve, meaning that they go to your graveyard, and we can get them back with Iroh's ability. Fury Storm lets us copy the spell for each time we cast our commander from the commands on this game, and let's just copy target instant or sorcery spell. Metamorphose. Fury Storm is an example of a card we can be used in the combo we'll talk about later. Metamorphose lets you just pick 2 mana, any combination of colors, and get it, and then draw a card. And then Reiterate lets you buy it back to copy a spell, and you choose your cards for the copy. Again, another key one that could be used in some pretty fun combos. But where I think the deck's really going to excel is your classic spells matter stuff. So The ceiling for a deck like ours is either going to be to storm off or to basically have enough mana or a way to cast a spell over and over again, to use different means. So you have things like Ral, which deals the damage to target opponent or planeswalker whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, or copy one. Coruscation Mage deals damage to each opponent whenever you cast a non-creature spell, and you can offspring it to have it deal 2 total. Archmage Emeritus draws you a card whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery. Doc Arlax actually reduce the cost of all the spells we cast from our graveyard by 2 or exile. This is really nice because then it's going to reduce that cost for lessons down to 0. Geralf says that whenever we cast a spell during our turn other than our first one, we make a 2/2 zombie, and every zombie comes in bigger for each other zombie that's coming this turn before it. Gutter Snipe deals out some damage whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell. Ral reduces all of our spells by 1. Again, really nice for the lessons. And then as we cast spells, if we could flip coins, and if we win the flip, we could flip it over into Ral Leyline Prodigy, who has that +1 ability to reduce the spells until our next turn. But on the upside, can get up to just allowing us to exile the top 8 cards of our library and cast all spells among them for free. Runaway Steamkin's another interesting one. Whenever we cast a red spell, we could put a counter on the Steamkin as long as it has fewer than 3 counters on it, and we can remove 3 counters from it to net 3 red mana. There's a couple creatures in our deck that are going to try to net us mana when we cast spells, and those are the kind of creatures we're going to want to look for to go really big on a turn. Stormkill Artist makes us a treasure whenever we cast or copy a spell. That's a really huge ability we can use to our advantage. Urabrask lets us deal damage to target opponent and add a red mana whenever we cast instant or sorcery. Again, a nice ability. And then, of course, if you're talking about spell slinging decks these days, you're going to either include or not include VV. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a counter on it and deal damage to each opponent, and then once per turn, you can get some mana equal to its power. VV is a excellent commander in its own right, but obviously a really great value piece here. Of course, we have things like Fire Inscription, another copy of that Gutter Snipe type ability, dealing damage to each opponent. Thousand Year Storm gives all of your spells Storm, a really nice ability to copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. You can get really bonkers as you just add more copies of the right spells at the right time. And then Primal Amulet, reducing all of our spells by 1, again, can reduce that flashback cost of the lessons. And then whenever you cast your 4th instant source, you get to flip it over into a land that lets you use that mana to copy the spell you cast with that mana. So it's we've got some interesting ways to really profit from the spells we're casting. But the way I kind of thought about it was we got two ways to really take advantage of these combo ways. The first is Stormkill Artist and Haze of Rage. Remember, we talked about Haze of Rage as a spell that you could pay to take mana back. So the way that this effectively is going to work is we need to have casted a spell or two before we cast the Haze of Rage. Because remember, it has Storm, so it's going to copy itself for each spell we've cast before it. And remember that Stormkill Artist makes a treasure for each spell for each spell you cast or copy. So as long as we have enough mana up to play it, and then have Storm enough times that we can make enough mana to continue to play it. So effectively, we want Haze of Rage to be our, ideally to be our 4th spell. But again, if you have enough mana, you can make it. You can have it make it only be your 2nd or 3rd spell and still be okay. But basically, you would buy it back and hope to net enough treasures with Stormkill Artist to cast it again, buy it back again. So you're consistently casting it over and over again, but you're casting spells. Now, there's a couple ways you could take advantage of it. You can use effects like Gutter Snipe or things like that to just burn out your opponents, or you can use something like Urabrask to damage your opponents. Again, the whole point is you need to add some way to damage your opponents with this to kind of speed the combo up. Or, if you have a board full of tokens or creatures, Haze Rage is going to make your board pretty big, right, with its ability. The second one is, again, another way to net an arbitrarily large amount of mana. So Mana Geyser says that you get a tapped red mana for each. You get a red mana for each tapped land your opponents control. And so you're going to use something like Reiterate, which for 3 mana lets you copy an instant or sorcery and choose targets for the copy. But you can play the buyback for 3 mana. So we just need to be able to cast Reiterate with its buyback to copy Mana Geyser, and then we will basically be able to go infinite on red mana and do this over and over again, just continually casting reiterate, targeting the original mana geyser, netting all the mana, and then again, because we're casting reiterate, we can use things like gutter snipe or any of these abilities that deal damage on cast to just damage our opponents out. So those are just some ways that you could take advantage of ending the game. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again: no deck's ever complete. It's my first shot at Iroh, and I think going into testing, there's really two ways you could take this. You can kind of focus more on the lessons and have fun, or you're going to have the people that are going to want to just push this up the bracket chain as it comes to spells decks. Well, there's a couple ways you could do this. You could add things like Burgee, which just really help us with netting the mana as we're casting spells. You can add the dual caster mage plus either Heat Shimmer or Twin Flame package where you can get an infinite number of dual caster mages. There's so many ways you could take the deck, and I think you're going to see that across all the people building out Iroh. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find Magical Christmas Land. It's not just to shuffle our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what hands are we looking to keep and how we're going to play this thing on out. So here, I've got a 1/2-lander with a Rampant Growth. Now, I also have Cycle of Renewal. Again, another lesson that lets you go deep for lands. We see Ral. We see some nice big spells. So I think as we ramp ourselves up, right, we can reduce those spells and get some nice value going forward. So turn when we see the Sulfur Falls, which is nice, that's going to be nice for when we go ahead and use this Rampant Growth, right? We can go get a red or a blue land, and we know that's coming in. I've got blue there. It almost tells me I should go for something like a mountain. Come to this turn in Sulfur Falls. Love the idea of Stormkiln Artist. Ral's not bad either. I mean, you could go Ral into this Cycle of Renewal and keep digging. I also don't hate the idea of just Stormkiln. Get some more treasures next turn when we do our things. I think I'm going to do that and just see where it leads us. So now I thought this turn is Ral. Cycle of Renewal, Ral's going to go off. So whenever we do it on our turn, we flip a coin. I'm going to call it heads. Okay, so we flip to tails, so it deals 1 damage to us. Sack the mountain. And I'll go get a forest and a mountain, right? Because that's what Cycle of Renewal is going to do. It's going to put 2 basic lands onto the battlefield tapped. And then Stormkiln's going to net us a treasure, right, for its ability. And then the nice part there is now we're ramping up. We have access to more mana. Not only that, but we got the nice treasure from Stormkiln in the process. Here, there's a couple ways you could do this. I mean, you could accumulate plus Fury Storm if you want to, but that isn't actually going to copy it. I'm trying to think what makes the most sense. I could dump in Iroh. I have the 6 mana for him. I guess it could set us up for the next turn. What makes the most sense? You could accumulate Wisdom. Just try to dig a little bit deeper for some stuff. Maybe we try that. Just 1 mana, right, because of Ral. Ral's ability is on cast, so we're going to call heads again this time. And we flip tails, of course. But we look at the top 3. We put one of those cards into our hand and the rest on the bottom. I think I like Vivi here just to get us access to some more mana. And we could play Vivi this turn. That nets us a treasure. We play Vivi. Now I've got the landscape and a couple treasures. I think I'd probably just go ahead and crack the landscape now. Just go get the basic land since I don't need it this turn. And then, you could still do the Archaics if we want to. It would get a VV trigger. Since we have 3 cards to hand, we're probably going to end up drawing 2 cards. And I think the key point here is you're putting the counter on VV. We'll try it again, call on heads. There we go. We finally got Ral to flip over. And we'll just +1 him, to be safe. But here go the Archaics. I'm sure it just ends up... That's not what I meant to do. It probably just ends up drawing us 2 cards. And again, we'll get the treasure off of... off of Stormkiln. Probably not much we can do this turn. We see the Haze of Rage, so interesting. We're almost there. And the nice part is now we have Vivi, right, as a damage target. So now, as long as we can cast this profitably over and over again, right, we're in good shape. So as we come back to our turns, we take up Ral, right, having it cost 1 less, have everything cost 1 less. It almost makes me wonder if this is 4 mana. This is 1 mana. That would get Vivi up to 3. I'd have enough to haze it back, but I didn't. I think I need to set up the turn. This was what I'm thinking. So, time warp to take another turn after this one. Netted treasure damage from Vivi. Shared roots here damage another treasure, or this will just go get us another basic land. And my thought here is I just want to try to see if I can net enough mana to play it. Well, I'm too deep on the storm, right? This is costing me 3 mana overall, 1 to cast it, 2 to buy it back. I've got the 6 mana from Vivi, and this is gonna get copied twice currently. I actually think I can go infinite. I can go, well, not infinite. I can go on the Haze Rage I want to. So I used Vivi's ability to net the 3 red. I'll cast the Haze of Rage with the buyback. It gets copied twice. That's not what I meant to do. It gets copied twice because I've cast 2 spells before it. That's 3 treasures because of Stormkill Artist. And you're still getting the trigger from Vivi. This goes back to my hand. Now again, I only have to pay 3, right, from the +1 from him still. Again, trigger damage. Now this is going off, what, 4 times? And now I'm up treasures, right? So now I'm just up treasures, and I have an extra turn after this one. So, you could go deep here. Now I can make a bunch of the dragons. But I mean, now you could see that you're just going to damage out with the Vivi. But if somebody doesn't damage out, let's say somebody kills Vivi in response or something like that, you could still net enough mana to go into the eruption for just a ton of dragons with prowess. There's an out, but I think you could start to see where when you assemble the right pieces, right, you can make a spell line like that work. Playtest 2 here, 4 land with the water skin, and then how to start a riot. So we do see a lesson. There we see an extra turn spell, but it's not something we want to use just quite yet. We're going 2 and 3 into the bond skin. Remember the water skin. Remember the water skin untaps during everybody else's turn. I like the idea of Garrof, or Garrof really helps us. It's going to net some tokens. I'm trying to think. Is it Thousand Year Storm and just set up, or is it Iroh? Let's try Iroh and see if that changes my line at all. So here's 7 mana. Remember, Ral's going to go off on the second spell cast. So go Urabrask into the Teachings. That'd be down to 3 mana, so there's probably a hot chance we end up netting some stuff here. You net the red from Urabrask and damage to an opponent. Draw 2. Now we've got this zombie train started. Now we've got a lesson in the graveyard we could get back if we want to. But now as we come to our turn, there's Balmor. Balmor is interesting. Could be good with these tokens, right? Giving out some giving out some giving out some buffs there when you're casting instant sorceries, right? I'm just trying to think of how I take advantage, right, of the most I can this turn, right? We could just slam Thousand Year Storm and try to really take advantage of it next turn, going Balmor into like temporal manipulation. You get to copy the manipulation, giving you multiple turns, and we could just try to dig deep that way. But I'm just trying to think of like that completely takes this turn off and probably just gets my board state to be at risk. But the key thing about that is I try to get another lesson in the graveyard, and Urabrask nets me mana. But again, all you got to do then is we can go for a few extra turns here because of the temporal manipulation being able to be flashbacked out of the graveyard with Iroh, right? So let's say I do that. Let's say I go Thousand Year Storm. That does not trigger Urabrask, right? Doesn't trigger right Garrof because not my second spell. We come to this turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my thought was Balmor, cast the temporal. It gets stormed. It doesn't storm. I apologize because it's only instant sorceries for storm. But Urabrask would go off, giving us the red mana. Garrof goes off, making us a zombie. We take the extra turn, and now this is able to be flashed back out of our graveyard. You could do the teachings, and you'd end up with a copy of it if we wanted to. We have that red mana from Urabrask. This would get us another goblin or another zombie with a counter on it. It would net us 2 cards at minimum. Now, if somebody has a big hand, right, this would get us more, but I think all that does is just nets us 2 cards. But now you've got you've got more from Urabrask, you've got a red mana again, Balmor's buffed them all. Now we go into our extra turn, right? Or was that our extra turn? I actually just completely lost focus. I was trying to think of how you used that last red mana. I think we were in the extra turn already. I just kind of went back. So here, 7 mana, you have this out of your graveyard, which is 5. So, you just cast a Rampant Growth. Again, you get the buffs. You get the buffs going. Now you already have one in for now you cast the Temporal back for 2 extra turns if you want to do that, right? So now you can start to see that you can manipulate the spells back out of your graveyard. Storm's interesting, allowing you to take advantage. If we got her in, we could give it Storm, right? Getting even more out of it. You could just start to see that these pieces can definitely combine together for more value, depending on what your board looks like. All right, playtest 3 here. We see the Storm and the Haze of Rage. There's Vivi. So this isn't actually a very bad hand. We just got to get it set up, right? Mana for Vivi, right? Team Song nets me 5, but I'd also get one here. That's 6 mana. This is 4. Doesn't seem worth it. Go Prophecy, Scry 2, draw. Price of Freedom, I think I'm okay with being on the bottom. Nothing to use the 1 red mana on just quite yet. Lay the Hideout. Sealing gets me up to 7 mana. Plus the 2 mana here, which is 9, 4. 4, but I don't think I'm there quite yet. But I could add a nice amount to the board, right? So I play the Seething Song, damage there. I net the 5 red, 4 of it for Stormkiln, 1 red left, 2 here, but I've got 5 total. Haze of Rage. Treasure for the copy, because it storms 1. And I've got 1 mana left in the 2 treasures, so we're close. We're absolutely darn close this turn on that one. But now we have the Haze sitting there, and we have Vivi. So, well, the Soul Ring does help. The Soul Ring. Haze, remember Vivi's netting us 4 mana, so I think we're good to go. Let me think about this. If I go Soul Ring, right in and right into Vivi for the Coruscation Mage. Got 3 red left here and a couple mana here. Haze of Rage. We've cast Soul Ring and Coruscation Mage, so this comes in here. And a couple red left from here, so I think I'm now good. These are going to damage my opponents out. All right, so we just happened to see the same combo twice in the same playtest. But remember, it was something I talked about being a nice part of the, the combos you can do, right? Especially if you could get your cast triggers out. Playtest 4 here. 4 lander with the Gutter Snipe. There's the Water Cannon. Song of Creation. Song of Creation is a really interesting card. So you can play an additional land in each of your turns. Whenever you draw a spell, or whenever you play a spell, you draw 2, and then you pitch your hand at the end of your turn, which is a very interesting idea. right? Especially as you're getting your value out of it. Waterkin, maybe. So the chakra says whenever it comes in, you bring a spell back from your graveyard to your hand. Whenever you cast into sorcery, you draw a card and then pitch one unless there's 3 legends in your graveyard. This can get me a wizard. I could get down Gutter Snipe. I'm not gonna play this for the wizard. I think I play this next turn just to get more mana. Play the Gutter Snipe. I don't know that I really want to run that Song of Creation out until I'm pretty ready to waste my hand, right? Because as soon as I play that Song of Creation, I lose my hand. Storm, I thought was the Prophecy. Scry 2, there's the Haze. I mean, Amethyst is just as good, especially when it comes to copying, right? Of course, Storm can't attack until this turn. Amethyst, I have enough. I'm 1 off buying back. Haze of Rage. If I Chakra, I could get this back. And I still have enough to Haze. But it's not as ideal because I don't have any way to really profit. I guess this gets to Storm it. I could Song, I just risk losing my hand. My thought was this. Have Storm attack and then do this out of the graveyard with Iroh's ability. This would then give it Storm. So I've only cast 1 spell before it. So it would end up doing this, but this would draw us 2 off of Amethyst's ability, and then we scry 2 and draw, twice. Interesting. Good way to reduce flashback. You should get the damage there, but my thought here is now the hope is you get some better things in your hand. What do I do here? I guess we'll pitch the hybrid. Ooh, Seething Song is interesting. What are you doing? I mean, we're a way to draw. Seething Song and Fury Storm don't go as well as you want it to because you can't, there's no way to bounce it back, right? Not like with the Reiterate, right, where you could bounce it back with the buyback. Amulet. Attack with Storm. Main 2 Seething Song. This gets the reduction. This gets stormed once. So we're drawing 2 there off that. And we're netting what? 10 red. My thought here was now I can fund the Haze of Rage a couple times to not only get it to storm and draw me cards, but I can really my thought was just to dig. But that feels bad, especially at this point in the game. I feel like I missed a line here, probably. And that's going to happen, right? When you're getting used to these decks, you're going to inevitably miss lines. You're going to, you're not going to see what you think you should see. But again, I think a lot of Iroh is just going to come down to what are you building into it? How are you going to try to make it function? I'd love to know what you think of Iroh down in the comment section alone. How are you taking your Iroh spells deck? And I will catch you on the next one.